Hello my friends, full movie recaps on the line. Today, I'll tell you about the movie The Intouchables. Driss and Felipe race through the night in Paris in Philip's Maserati. Felipe is tired of life in a wheelchair, tired of pity, and the inability to be with the woman he loves. All he wants is to drive wherever his eyes take him. A police car appears behind them. Driss suggests a bet that he can shake off the cops. Felipe agrees to the challenge. However, a few blocks later, the car is stopped. Driss proposes a new bet. The police will act as their escort. Felipe agrees. When Driss gets handcuffed, he claims he was taking Felipe to the hospital, saying Felipe is having a seizure and might die. Felipe plays along, convincingly pretending to have a seizure. The police, terrified he might actually die, escort them to the hospital. After they leave, Driss and Felipe drive off, continuing their journey. These two didn't become close friends right away. They first met when Driss came for an interview, only wanting a signature to prove he applied for the job, and continue receiving unemployment benefits. Felipe, paralyzed from the neck down, was looking for a caregiver. He liked Driss's straightforward attitude and boldness. Driss, on the other hand, was smitten with Philip's red-haired assistant, Magali. Felipe refused to sign the document immediately and promised to do it the next day, if Driss returned. Driss lives in a crowded home with his cousins, nieces, and nephews. One of them, Adama, has fallen in with the wrong crowd, and Driss worries about him. When the matriarch of the family returns, she lashes out at Driss, calling him a hopeless case and saying she's tired of carrying a grown man on her back. She throws him out, forcing him to spend the night on the streets with friends. The next morning, Driss arrives at Philip's house to collect the signature. One of Philip's assistants shows him around the house, including his room and bathroom. In case Driss decides to take the job, she then takes him to Felipe, who offers him a choice: take the signed document and leave, or stay and try working. Felipe bets Driss won't last 2 weeks on the job. Driss, intrigued, accepts the challenge. However, he has no idea what kind of work awaits him. He must massage Philip's paralyzed legs, wash him every morning, dress him, feed him, open his mail, and handle countless other tasks. But what disgusts Driss most is the thought of putting compression stockings on another man, and wearing gloves for purposes he's yet to understand. "I'm not rubbing anyone," he declares. It's a matter of principle. In addition to the staff, helpers, and the master of the house, Philip's adopted daughter, Elisa, also lives there. She is dating a scruffy young man named Baston, whom Driss immediately dislikes. Felipe and his late wife struggled to have children for a long time. After 5 miscarriages, they decided to adopt Elisa. Later, Philip's wife passed away, and he had an accident while paragliding, which left him paralyzed. The worst thing isn't being in the wheelchair, it's being without her, Felipe confides to Driss. Meanwhile, Yvonne, one of the assistants, accidentally stumbles upon Driss's bed while entering his room. Inside, she finds a folding knife and a baton. Concerned for her boss's safety, she struggles to trust a stranger from the streets, no matter how charming he may seem. Felipe plans to visit an art gallery and asks Driss to drive him in the specially adapted car for disabled people. Driss refuses to use it. Instead, he notices a Maserati covered with a tarp in the yard. Despite Philip's protests about its impracticality, Driss insists. He carefully seats Felipe in the car, places his wheelchair in the trunk, and hops behind the wheel. As they try to leave, they encounter a car parked in front of the gate. It belongs to Philip's neighbor, who frequently parks there. In just 1.5 minutes, Driss teaches the neighbor never to park in that spot again, using brute force rather than polite arguments. At the gallery, Felipe intends to buy an abstract painting for almost 40,000 euros. Driss is outraged, unable to understand how anyone could spend so much on what he considers meaningless smear of taint. He confidently claims he could create a better piece himself. Philip's relatives and friends warn him about Driss. Antoine even arranges a special meeting to discuss it. He reveals that Driss has a criminal record and is, overall, a highly antisocial character. But Felipe values something else. Driss doesn't pity him. Driss often forgets Philip's limitations, like handing him the phone when it rings, unaware that Felipe cannot answer it himself. Driss continues to flirt with Magali, but she rejects all his advances. He also doesn't miss an opportunity to tease Elisa. Driss learns from Yvonne that Felipe has been corresponding with a woman for 6 months, though they've never met. Magali writes the replies on Philip's behalf, following his dictation. One night, Driss is woken by Philip's groans. He is experiencing phantom pain. Driss tries to calm him down, but the pain persists. So, Driss takes Felipe out for a nighttime stroll, offering him some marijuana along the way. The relief is immediate. At a cafe, they talk, and Felipe asks Driss to return the Fabergé egg he stole during their first meeting. The egg was a gift from Philip's late wife. Later, while dictating another letter to Eleonore, Driss intervened, suggesting that Felipe call her since she had given him her phone number. Felipe resisted, but Driss dialed the number and handed the phone to Felipe, forcing him to speak. Their correspondence faded after that, as Felipe and Eleonore started speaking on the phone more frequently. Despite the challenges of his job, Driss occasionally found time for fun with Felipe. Although they saw entertainment differently, Felipe found the opera deeply moving, while Driss could only see a singing treant in German. When it came time to send Eleonore a photo, Driss and Felipe selected one where he was in his wheelchair, though it wasn't obvious he was paralyzed. Later, Felipe swapped it for a picture of himself before the paragliding accident. True to his word, Driss started painting a piece he believed could rival the abstract painting Felipe had purchased. However, Elisa disrupted his creative process with her dismissive attitude, prompting Driss to ask Felipe for permission to set her straight. Felipe, seeing that Elisa had indeed crossed a line, promised to handle it himself. Driss completed his painting and sought feedback from the household. Most admired it. Meanwhile, Philip's life began to change too. With help from Driss's contacts, he upgraded his wheelchair to reach higher speeds. Together, they even arranged for erotic massages, though Philip's only sensitive area was his ears, much to Driss's amusement. On Philip's birthday, his relatives and friends gathered to listen to classical music. Meanwhile, Driss checked on Elisa, who had locked herself in her room after being dumped by Baston. She had swallowed pills, mistaking them for sleeping tablets. Driss brought her back to her senses and later returned to the main hall, turning the subdued gathering into a lively dance party with modern tracks. After the celebration, Felipe showed Driss's painting to Antoine, claiming it was by a debut artist about to be exhibited in London and Berlin. Antoine, initially skeptical, eventually bought the piece for €11,000, seeing it as a worthwhile investment. At the end of the day, Driss gave Felipe a gift, his own photograph. Meanwhile, Eleonore wanted to meet Felipe in person. Felipe grew increasingly nervous about the upcoming date, spending a long time choosing his outfit. He brought Yvonne along but ultimately couldn't handle the pressure and asked to leave. Just before Eleonore arrived, Driss, meanwhile, dealt with Baston. He met him after school and made it clear he had to apologize to Elisa. Along with his apology, Baston was tasked with bringing Elisa croissants every morning. Felipe and Driss embarked on an extreme mountain weekend. Upon their return, Driss found his younger brother waiting for him, asking for help with trouble he had gotten into. Felipe realized that Driss needed to leave, as he couldn't take care of him forever. Driss revealed that Audama wasn't his biological brother. His mother was actually his aunt, who had raised him as her own. When Driss announced his departure, Magali came to say goodbye, introducing her partner to Driss. After bidding farewell to Felipe and Yvonne, Driss set out to resolve his brother's problems. This time, he politely asked a driver blocking the driveway to move their car, showcasing his newfound patience. Driss had changed. He was more attentive and caring, helping his aunt find a job and negotiating with the people exploiting his brother. In drug trafficking, Felipe tried to return to his old life but found no assistant could match Driss. He grew despondent, his beard unkempt and his gaze lifeless. One night, Felipe called Driss and asked him to visit. They drove around Paris in the Maserati before the police stopped them and escorted them to a hospital. Later, Driss took Felipe to the seaside, shaved him, cleaned him up, and brought him to a small restaurant, but he didn't stay for breakfast. Instead, he called Eleonore and arranged a date for Felipe. Before leaving, Driss placed the Fabergé egg on the table, a gift Felipe thought he'd never see again. Felipe eventually married Eleonore. They had children and moved away.